Cool. Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm joined by the lovely Jess Owens and Nigel, and we're calling this the Booktube Afterparty because it's not really a party. It's more of like grab your snacks and a cozy blanket and a beverage because we're just going to chat and be silly. And it's just going to be random chatting. It's not really, maybe some of the stuff from some of your videos will come up, but it's probably just going to be us talking about our dogs. But I'll let Jess introduce herself for those that don't know her.
Hi, I'm Jess. This is a sleepy, grumpy Nigel. Sorry. My channel is Jess Owens, where I talk about bookish news, drama, the hottest goss, if you will. And sometimes I read books, mainly sci-fi, fantasy. Well, usually, but lately I've been reading romance. I'm telling everybody I've been reading a lot of romance. And yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know Jess from her book community videos. I feel like even if you didn't want to be known for those, that's like the thing. I love when people are like, I hate all the drama and the gossip and stuff. And then they're like, I love the community videos.
Yeah, it's just like any other person's videos. If it's like someone does an unpopular opinion or a rant review and that has like 10K. And then they're like, I love this book. And it's like 2K. It's like, why? Just say, we like a balance. We like both. It's fine.
Yeah, or it's the whole back and forth of popular books versus, books that aren't well known. And people be like, I hate that everybody just talks about the same popular books all the time. And then you're like, well, the numbers say different.
Yeah. And it's just like, if you're talking to the same people, you got to branch out.
I think it's fair to say nobody likes being involved in drama, but
yes.
People like knowing what's going on.
Yeah, that's what I say. I'm like, I love drama as long as I'm not in it.
So to be clear, to talk about a little bit of what gets brought up in your videos, a lot of times it's about publishing, which is, I think, been very educational for a lot of people that don't know how publishing works or don't know what goes into it and some of the shady stuff that can happen. And I really like when you talk about publishing stuff. I know apparently one person thinks it's boring when they want the petty stuff.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I love the stuff about publishing because it's, in my opinion, not to put down, what different things you talk about in your videos, but I'm like, this is really important stuff. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we a lot of times hope it's changed, or there are people that are wronged by I mean, I don't know how much I want to list any specifics, but there was an author who they weren't paying her royalties.
Yeah. Joan Key.
Yeah. You're like, I'll say it.
Well, her book is out today, so I'm thinking about her, and I'm like mad that I don't have the book because my mail takes so daggone long. But the ones we're meant to find is out. Yeah,
and I read Percent of the Crane, and I liked it. And I even had DM'd the author on Instagram being like, I was just wondering if there's going to be a sequel. And I don't know. Obviously, I don't know. So I'm not trying to speak for her. But at the time, she was like, oh, at the moment, there's no plans. And I don't know if that was something like because of what was going on in the publishing, what with them, that she couldn't, like, maybe because it seems like there should be a sequel, right? But so it doesn't feel like the story's really done. And I don't know if it was one of those things where they wanted to wait and see and then they would commit to sequels, because that happens a lot of times. I feel like that's something people don't know, is that a lot of times they'll commit to publishing the first book even though you want it to be a series. And sometimes authors even have to slightly change the book a little bit so it feels more completed in case they can't sell the second, third. Like, I know I went
to do well, then they will like, no, we're not going to continue.
Yeah, that can happen. So I know like V.E. Schwab before V.E. Schwab blew up, I went to a book signing of hers. It was right when the third Shades of Magic book came out. So it was like right before V.E. Schwab got like super big. And she was talking about the Vicious, at the time, Vicious was the only one of the books in that series out. And she had said that she had always planned for that to be a trilogy. I can't remember what she said the last one would be called, but they were always V's. I think she said Vicious, Vengeful, and then like Villainous or something like that. And I was like, oh, it was like me in like a room of some other people at a local bookstore. They're like, yeah, that sounds great. And then when Vengeful came out, and so many people were like, I didn't know. And I think some people thought that she was just like, I'm going to come back to this after the fact and then write a sequel. And I'm like, I know that she said that she actually always wanted it. And
I didn't think that. I had always heard Vicious is a standalone, and then I read it and I was like, I loved it. That's it. And then heard that and I was like, why is this happening? But I didn't know it was planned that way. Oh.
So I think that I don't want to like, this is not like, I didn't fact check a bunch of the things, like I'm not trying to say like, this is true information. Now go run with it and tell everyone. But, I know some people thought An Ember in the Ashes was a standalone when it came out. And then they were like, that ending is clearly not. And I mean, part of me almost wonders if that's possibly true. I don't know why that came out so weird. It's like extra syllables. But the fact that there was like the rebranding too. It got a different cover after the second one. It was almost like, oh, people do like this. So like, let's commit to a look. I don't know. That's a whole other thing to cover change.
I'm so mad that I didn't get those fairy loot.
I have them.
I'm like, I saw them in your book haul, okay? And did Leah get them too? I was like, I haven't read them, but I was like, why didn't I get them? God, they're so cute.
So I read the first 3. And so I actually liked the original covers more than the newer covers, just because I don't love when there's real looking or real people on the covers. But I will say the spines look pretty nice. But anyway, I was like, you know what? I'm enjoying these. They're fun. And somebody's going to make a box set when the 4th one comes out because they're really popular. So I'm just going to turn these into my local used bookstore and then I'll just wait. And then sure enough, there's this gorgeous set. And I'm like, all right, should I grab them? Or are you like, please don't?
I wish that and the Poppy War trilogy from Illumicrate.
Yes.
I'm upset. I'm so upset.
I have to grab them just because we're talking about them.
How dare you?
Well, other people might not know.
Oh my God, look at them. Oh my God, Reaper's my favorite.
They're so beautiful. I'm going to grab one more thing really quick if I can remember. Here it is. There's one other thing I wanted to mention too of a different book. But hello. Hi.
So pretty those are.
They're so these covers I think are like UK editions. Like you can get.
Yeah, because I randomly have the 3rd one. This is a Goldboro edition. Because this was pretty, but I don't have them all.
They all have this like awesome on the spray. I have said before I don't like sprayed edges in the past, but
what?
I know I didn't used to like sprayed edges because I like consistency when I look at my shelf of just like I like that. So currently my books are organized primarily by size because I just love the consistency. That's why I hate when books will like randomly be taller. Stupid.
I've given up.
The floppy paperbacks of Stormlight are not all the same size and drives me crazy. Or like never mind. Hold on. Let me finish my thought before. the seeing like the nice page color and then a random like blue or something used to be like, I don't know why, because I like consistency. But yeah, these all have that beautiful. And then, I mean, I know you've seen it. I feel bad because it seems like but for people that didn't get the chance to see what these look like, and then all of them on their, they all have like this design, but this design is like in a different place on each of the covers. I know, I'm sorry. But I also,
Jessica, why did I save my money? How stupid.
I get this too. I waited initially and didn't get this. This is The Last Wish from Witcher. It's the, I think Illumicrate. I think it's Illumicrate. It says on the inside. Am I lying? Is it Fairy Loot? Wait.
Is there no dust jacket? Is it just like that?
It's Illumicrate. Yep. It's on naked hardback. And it's cool because this will, I mean, for people that like Witcher, they have the bird as the eye of the wolf, which I'm like, oh, that's perfect. And I think it looks way better in person because when I saw pictures of it, I was like, it's a little like simple. But
I mean, it's beautiful to me.
I got it because what?
I said, just love a beautiful book.
Oh no, I got it because so for a lot like the Barnes and Noble edition that's come out, that's like the TV show. I'm like, that's actually a really nice cover. Because currently we just have like the video game covers, right? Mm-hmm. in English anyway. Other countries are getting with it and getting like super cool. There's always been cool Polish ones. I currently only have the entire Witcher series in Polish, even though I don't. But so we have the video game covers, and then the Barnes and Noble edition that's come out. Actually, I think looks really cool. But I'm like, I'm gonna wait and see if you release all of them, because I'm not gonna buy like one and then you never release the rest. And also, what if the rest look really dumb? But the reason I made an exception with this is because it's one of those book boxes, and I think the way it works is they have to make sure that people are interested and committed before they print more of the books. So that's why I'm like, all right, I'll make an exception for this one. But yeah, the Polish editions of the Witcher series, there's like these awesome black covers that are really cool. There's really old school white covers that I like. I got their like a really, really light blue, and I think they're really awesome. And they're like right on the naked hardback, and they have like his signature across the spines when they're all together. It's pretty cool. They're cool.
I think they are Mandarin editions of, is it Stormlight? That I saw.
They look like glass, like stained glass.
Yes. Oh my God. I was like,
because they did it for Mistborn too, I think. This is when I started to get sidetracked. So I read, which we'll talk about in a second. Why? What is with this? Do you see this?
Why? I hate it.
Why? They're like all different sizes. I don't understand. So really quick, I'll say, because I know some people, The Bone Ships, which is by the same author, that was like the buddy read for one of the months, and like Jess was gonna join us, and obviously Jessie from Jessie May, and then Abby, and then like none of us were loving it. So if anybody's wondering what's up with that, we were like, well, we would feel bad like 4 people getting together to be like, I don't really like it. Yeah. But Age of Assassins is the same author, and it's totally different, and I really enjoyed it. So I recommend that one. But I bought the next 2, and then I was looking at it because next to it on the shelf are a bunch of other Orbit books. So the first thing I noticed is that the Orbit symbol is not. Whoops! Yeah. I have them out of order, which is not helpful. But did I just make it worse? I did. That wasn't helpful. I'm like looking at the camera and like not doing it correctly. Anyway, the Orbit symbol is not in the same place, right? And that's the first thing I noticed, since there's so many other Orbit books next to it. And so see how the Orbit symbol on the third one is higher? And I was like, that's weird. Why is that one higher? And all the other books that are Orbit over there, it's like all like the Senlin books and the Wolf of Oren-Yaro, they're like all the same place. And then that one I saw was a little higher, and I'm like, that's weird. And I pointed out to my husband, I'm like, why? Why is that one? He goes, I think that whole trilogy is off. And I like looked at I like how I look like this, as if it's like a great height. I was like, you're right. Dang it. Why?
Because I used to try to put my books by size, but then that would happen. And sometimes like my 5th season is a UK version, and then I ordered the next 2 in paperback, but US, and I didn't even think about it. But of course, the UK one is shorter and
always. It's always a different size.
Even when you buy them sometimes from like Barnes and Noble, or like they're all the US cover, and it just like the slightest.
Yes.
Especially in the same series. I don't know why there's so many variations of book sizes, but it should be against the law.
Oathbringer, my floppy of Oathbringer, I don't know if you can see it because it's pretty minimal, but it is a little bit shorter than the other 2. I remember I got a comment. I've said this, I think, before. I don't remember if it was in like an actual video or just chatting with friends, but I have an arc of Rhythm of War, which is why I have what looks like a floppy paperback of Rhythm of War and a hardback. But the floppy at first was the only edition I had, right? Of this, but it was an arc, and it's printed on like those Bible pages where you're like, I can see what's happening on the next page because they're so thin. And so it's, even though it's longer than Oathbringer, it looks much shorter because of it's an arc. So they're printing it on not as nice paper and stuff. But I had a comment that was like, oh, I'm so discouraged to see that Rhythm of War is so much shorter. Now I don't even know if I want to read it, or something like that. And I was like, oh, it's an arc. It's like, it's actually longer. But yeah, I felt kind of bad because I'm like, I mean. Yeah,
don't be discouraged. Brandon didn't speak on any words.
John gets frustrated because he feels like there's this little like hee-hee, tee-hee joke in the Stormlight Archive, because there's a part in one of the books where a character's like, well, sequels always have to be longer. And Sean's like, no, Sanderson, if this is your way of saying that every time it's got to be longer, stop it. Because Sean used to read a lot of fantasy when he was, I say when he was younger, as if like we're really old. But he's just like, his tastes are always kind of shifting, right? And so Stormlight, he's picked up, but he's not a series person anymore. He doesn't read like a ton of fantasy. And so he's like, oh, because he reads a lot of literary fiction and stuff. And it's usually like one and done. And they're usually not always, sometimes like he's read Gravity's Rainbow, which was massive. He read was it Mason and Dixon by Thomas Pynchon. And those books are huge, but otherwise a lot of times they're much shorter, and he gets frustrated because he's like, stop writing long books.
I'm a fantasy reader in a series, and I just am like, Brandon, I started Oathbringer at the beginning of April, and then
Oathbringer is my least favorite. I know.
Really? I know people say that of the first 3, that was their fave.
They say it's their favorite?
I've heard, or at least from some people, that their favorite was Oathbringer.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because those books are huge, and so there's different things that appeal to different people about them. And then depending on what the focus is, you're either gonna, love an entry or hate an entry, or maybe not hate, but not like it as much. And so Oathbringer, I've said it before because I feel like it's perfect. Yeah, Sean always says it's a bunch of a character Skyping people. And like, it's true, because there's a character that's like he's trying to convince people of something, and people are like, no, we don't really believe you. And then he's like, what if I use this magic to like show you? And because like they can kind of almost like fax each other.
Yeah.
Instead of fax, so Sean's like, he went from a fax message to people to like Skyping them, and they're like, I don't care if you're faxing me or Skyping me, like I don't believe you, I'm not joining you. And he's like, why can't we see some of these other things that are happening instead of spending so much time in these Skype calls? So I kind of agree. I will say that I think the backstory, is really well done in that one, because all of them have backstories, obviously. But I mean, I don't know, some of the backstory stuff, I was like, this is good, but I love Kaladin's backstory, and Shallan's I thought was great. And so I'm like, they're all great. Like, Rhythm of War is the one people like the least when it comes to the backstory stuff. But I liked all the backstory. So even though that one is good, I'm like, they're all good. So I was talking to somebody, though, who didn't like Rhythm of War as much. And they're like, I just feel like, I get it. Like, the characters, like, when are they going to get over these hangups? And I was like, well, depression doesn't really just go away. It's a person I know in person, right? Not like a commenter, like being snarky, like doesn't go away. But I was like, I think that's kind of the point, is that depression, it's like sticks with you, and these mental things they don't just go away. He's like, yeah, but I'm just like, I don't know when. Basically, like the same thing, like, but when are they going to like conquer this? I get it's not always entertaining to read, for sure, because you're like, oh, like, didn't you already learn about your self-worth? And
I appreciate Brandon and bringing up like depression and the trauma and like talking about that all with like Kaladin, but also I was like, but wow, what a downer right now. And it being so long, it's like, I've only read the first 2, and like, they're great books. I'm a Brandon Sanderson fan. I enjoyed them, but just sometimes I was like, wow, Brandon, I just wish somebody like Kaladin could have a little joy or something good would happen. And then I'm like, damn it. And then I'm like, oh wait, I've already read 3 books and I'm still reading this one.
And it's like, I very sweet Bookborn. I don't know if shout out to Bookborn. I did a video with her on her channel, and some of the people from 17th Shard, who are also lovely, and then Alex from Alex Nieves, and we were like chatting predictions and stuff like that for the 5th book. And it was funny to see some people that are like, I think these like terrible things, I don't want to say like in relation to any characters or anything like that, but just like predicting like certain terrible things happening to certain characters. And I'm like, some of our characters, like, they've been through enough. Like, how many more bad things? It's like the person in the Bible where it's like one terrible thing, like, and then their wife dies and then their child dies, and it's like all these things, and I'm like, is this what this is? Is this like a metaphor?
It's a break. That to me was, oh my gosh, Nigel, gosh, he's so rude. And then he looks at me like, I don't know. With Robin Hobb, the Farseer trilogy, like, it's not a spoiler. Fitz does not live a happy life. And I'm like, God damn it, this is just depressing. Like, I want something good to happen to the main character. Yeah. And I'm just not excited about the third book because I'm like, it's 900 pages of what? Misery, Robin?
I feel so bad. I feel so bad because I keep putting those books on my TV because I read the first one. And I keep putting them on TBRs and I keep not reading them. And I'm like, I'm so sorry because I know it's annoying. But man, I just like every time I think about reading it, I'm just like, this is going to be a dreary experience.
Like, her writing is amazing, but the story, I'm like, Rob, give me something.
I mean, this is why I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a good sob story. I love depressing stuff. I love it. And I don't know what it is, but there's some books that it doesn't matter. Any sad thing can happen. And I'm like, that's amazing. But I tend to really love books or stories that have like, it's hard to hit, but there's like a perfect blend of really sad and then also really campy. And I feel like Full Metal Alchemist is that. Full Metal Alchemist has such campy moments, but then it's also really sad stuff. And I'm like, it's perfect. Or like Final Fantasy X, same thing. But then you get like the video game Ghost of Tsushima, which is just like sadness. It's so sad. So sad. And I'm like, that's like one of the best video games of all time. I love it so much. It's so good.
I am not a gamer. Besides The Sims, I don't think that counts in the gaming world.
No, you can count any game you want. I'm like, I don't like when people are gatekeepers of like, well, you don't play these kinds of games, so you're not real. Whatever. If you like video games, cool. But in one of your videos, you're talking about, you know, like if you just want to like sit and play The Sims for 48 hours and not shower, and then you stop, you're like, I'm not going to do that, and you're like, and not blink, and because not blinking's better than not showering.
I was like, wait, am I telling on myself here?
Okay, let's be real. You know, sometimes you want to save water for the planet, and you're like, well, I didn't get real snow today, so I'll do my part. It'll help the planet.
I didn't do much. Why am I going to put on another sweatpants? Like, come on, I'm trying to save. I don't want to do more laundry. I'm not going anywhere because the Pamplona is outside. So,
what is your favorite P word that you have used as a substitute for?
Oh my God,
for the word?
At first, it was panorama. That was my fave for a while.
Personal pizza was pretty great.
I love that one. The podcast I listen to, The Read, they always add new ones every week. So like A Penny Proud. Recently, I've been loving that one. Really, this probably my favorite thing about COVID has just been these different P words that come out. Oh, I also like to use Panera. There's a Panera outside.
Panera bread.
Yeah.
This personal Panera bread we're experiencing.
Nigel, why are you?
By the way, since Nigel, I'm assuming he passed gas a bit ago. Is that what was smelly? Yeah. So Luna likes to do this thing where she'll like, if we're sitting on the couch or something, and she'll like come over to us, and then she'll like put her front paws up, and she'll like kind of like, you know, sort of be like in our lap. She's more just like right in our face when we're petting her. And she always uses that time to I don't know if she's like actually just trying to like stretch herself so that out or what. And the sound of it is like a human's. And sometimes you're like, Luna. And then the other time, and it's like, I wish I could, it sounds weird to say, like I wish I could get it on film almost.
I've tried.
So funny. But when she goes, because, you know, dogs, like, they clean themselves down there. And, like, whenever she, like, contorts her body to clean herself, she'll always, like, not always, but that's often when she passes gas, like, right in her little sweet, fluffy face. And it's just so funny because you're like, know that. It's very silly.
I will do it and then look at his butt like, is that me? And he's woken
Yes.
himself out of his sleep before. Like, he's gone, and then he's been like, oh. I'm like, yeah, that was you. You didn't feel that out of your little body. It's he's so small, but he packs a lot of gas.
He also, when you shared that clip of him, I think it was on your Instagram stories of his weird snoring.
Yeah.
Noise. It's so weird. It's so
He
weird.
does that. Yeah, dreaming, and it's so weird because sometimes his eyes are open, but he's sleeping, and he just does that, and I always am like trying to get a recording of it, but yeah, he doesn't do it like all the time, but when he does, I'm just like, oh, I love it.
Like, you know how dogs have their puppy dreams where like their little feet move, which is the most the sweetest, most precious thing. But Luna, sometimes it's gotten to like, it gets so crazy that I'm like, is she having like a seizure? And I get concerned, and then I'm like watching her. And they say you're not supposed to wake your dogs up when they're dreaming like that. And I mean, and who would? Because in my mind, I'm like, they're probably dreaming of like running through a nice meadow or something, right? But at the same time, I'm like, but is she okay? Because it's getting really crazy.
I've been like, just put my hand, like he'll be on his back. I'm just like, put my hand on his stomach, like, okay, I'm here. And then he'll like calm down. But yeah, sometimes it's like, you're a little too active for me right now.
So I have to ask, because we say Luna has expressive ears. Does Nigel like, do his ears like pivot a lot and do stuff, or they just kind of stick up?
Oh no, like especially when he is wanting to listen to you because he knows what I'm saying. When he wants to, they like, and he's like, or yeah, they like move, and then when he's really alert, they're like up, and then they like, one is very floppy because when we got him, his ears were floppy for a long time. Like other puppies, they were already like standing up. We're like, oh, we got a floppy, and then they finally started. But this one still, but yeah, when he's like really alert, or when he's like hearing something, they like rotate because he doesn't. I was like, Nigel, you're almost a perfect dog, except you don't give me head tilts. So, you know, like dogs were like,
yeah.
I'm like, we don't get a lot of head tilts, but it'll just be like his ears like swivel like a satellite, and I'm like, fine.
Yes. I know. When I was a kid, we had a Westie. Have you ever seen those?
Yes.
Yeah, they're very cute dogs, and he was like the king of head tilts. We'd be like, Buster, Buster, and he would like tilt. Westie's head tilts are very cute too. Luna doesn't really head tilt either. She does the ear. So her ears, they move all sorts of ways. So like they do the swiveling, the straight up, but also sometimes if like she has scared herself passing gas before, and her ears would go like straight back, and she gets like a puppy face. It's so cute when her ears go straight back. But then sometimes when she's sleepy, they like go like straight out, and it's very silly. And it's like a mushy face because then when she's like down, because then all the fluff from her face like poofs up and her ears are flat. It's so cute.
He's so squishy. This, and then like if we're walking, because he has these big old ears, sometimes it's been really windy lately, and so he like will tuck them down, and he's like trying to lay down. I'm like, all right, we're gonna shorten the walk today. It's too loud. I can't imagine what it sounds like in these things. You grumpy pants.
Does he ever get the hair on the back of him standing up at all? Like when is he aggressive at all toward if he hears certain noises and stuff?
Yeah, like he gets really tense in like his ears, but I haven't, maybe I'm not looking, I haven't really looked. I don't think like his fur stands up, but you can tell, or like when we're getting close to like a dog, he gets in like, sometimes in this like stalker mode, just like low to the ground, like I'm ready to pounce. Because being a COVID baby, because we got him like right after we were on lockdown here, he hasn't had as much socialization as we would have liked, and so he still doesn't play with others as well as we would like. Like, should we get him a brother? But then again, he's very selfish. I don't know, like where would see?
Like only me.
Yeah. I'm always like, Nigel, do you want a brother? And he just doesn't want to look at me. And I'm like, is that a no? Is it your bedtime? Are you sleepy? You look very tired.
I definitely want another dog. I want 3 dogs total. I said that and Luna grumbled. I want several dogs, and I do want like a massive giant boy Akita at some point because they're just so cute. Because Luna's like a little princess. Her look, anyway, her attitude, I guess in a way it's princessy because it's very like, I'm gonna do what I want, and I don't know, but she's very independent. But then I don't know, I just want every dog I see, I'm always like, I want it. But her hair a couple of times has gone way up between her shoulder blades, and it's when she like thinks there's danger around. And it's weird. It's weird to see their hair go up like that and like really alert. And then she looks like buff because I feel like her muscles grow too. And like, I don't know. She's a pretty muscular little pup, but she's very cute. So Akitas are known for being very protective and very loyal. So I feel like we had to get her around other dogs when she was young, so she didn't develop those kind of, or those instincts wouldn't be as strong to like hate everybody else except for us. So we had to socialize her.
He's got his little man complex where we pass big dogs and he's like, I'm like, they would eat you. It's like a Great Dane that could just step on you. But he's like, I sometimes call him Scrappy Doo because that's what he reminds me of sometimes. Let me at him.
I feel like Luna, she's not, super huge, but she's a big dog. So when other dogs, like there's a dog in the neighborhood that's like it looks like a miniature greyhound, and a couple times has hopped over its fence because its fence isn't very high, and then it's like barking like crazy and running at Luna, and I'm like, and it's right by our house, so I'm like, why don't you turn around and take Luna back? Because if that dog, like skinny as it is, wanted to fight Luna, I'm like, you would die, like little dog, like. And so I will start to like walk toward the dog trying to like get it to go back because I'm like, well, I'm not afraid of you, you're tiny, but I'm also not gonna, if you try to fight me, I'm not gonna like instincts kick in and then like kill you or something. Yeah, Luna's a sweet dog, but I would say she's not aggressive really. And with other dogs, if another dog starts something though, her instincts will kick in, and that's when it's like, but she doesn't start it. She doesn't initiate, But there was these stupid girls in my old neighborhood walking their Rottweiler, and they thought it was hilarious that like, sometimes when you're walking and then you see another dog owner and then you're like, oh, can my dog say hi? And you're like, yeah, and your dogs say hi or whatever. And then it was a boy dog, and he I agree, Luna's a very cute doggy, and he thought so too, and he was like, I'm a boy dog, so like this is what I do, and he just started to like try to do stuff to her, and the girls were laughing, and I shoved their big Rottweiler off my dog and just was like pissed off because I'm like, no, you're the one with the leash, get your dog off my dog, this isn't funny.
Yeah, who would just stand there and let their dog do that?
I was so mad. And then there was at the dog park. This is why going to the dog park like makes me nervous, because this lady had a husky. It was very pretty, but it wanted to fight Luna. It would follow Luna around the whole dog park, like this giant field. So we put Luna back on the leash to try to like take Luna to a different part of the field, and the dog would not stop following us. And the lady's like, oh, it's just like, my dog's just a jerk, like, oh, knock it off. But she wouldn't put the leash back on the dog. And it was like starting to growl and like try to bite Luna's legs. And Luna didn't like that. And I'm just like, get your dog out of here. What are you doing? It was making me very upset.
People are, yeah, I follow like a dog trainer or whatever on Instagram, and she's very against dog parks. And then after having gone to the dog park a couple times, I'm like, yeah, I'm unless it's empty, not a fan.
Yeah, I know. It stinks because for some dogs, it's just like happy playtime. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so cute and lovely. But then it's like people like that who just, it frustrates me so much. I like how this whole thing is just turning into a chat about dogs. We knew that was going to happen, though. Like even beforehand, for those, who are watching this, we're like, should we just make it about our dogs, or should we like maybe have other stuff to talk about? And then here it is. It's about our dogs.
We read books, yes, but
but yeah, she at the dog park, it's so cute because I feel like she doesn't know how to play with other dogs. She'll like run along. If she sees dogs running and getting excited, she'll like follow them and be happy, and then she'll just kind of watch them and see like what's so exciting. Like this photo, right? Like she doesn't want to miss out, but she also doesn't want to participate. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that you got from me, because that's how I feel.
No,
Like,
I relate. Yes. I'm like, I don't want to go, but I also don't want to miss out. How do I do both?
exactly. That's Luna, I feel like.
A relatable queen, honestly.
Well, to make sure that the video isn't too much about dogs, what have you been reading lately? And what have you been liking anything, hating anything?
Well, somehow it's May. Oh,
I know. I'm upset.
But so like I said earlier, mostly the second part of April, I was just like reading romance, contemporary romance, historical romance, and I was just loving it all. I read so many good ones. And then to start this month, I had a couple books that carried over, and I finished an audiobook. It's called What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat. I think this was called, by Aubrey Gordon. And she also has a podcast, which I started listening to. And so that was really interesting, coming from the perspective of a fat woman and just learning things I didn't know, like terminology that is better than other things, and just trying to work against what society has conditioned my brain to think is acceptable, or, that. So that was really interesting. And then I'm reading Detransition Baby by Tori Peters, which was in one of my videos. It's by, I think someone said one of the first books by like a major publisher by a transgender author. I don't know if that's true, but it was long listed for the Women's Prize, but I don't think it made it to the short list.
Yeah, because the Real Pleased letter.
Oh yeah, all those women and whoever signing their pen names using dead authors for their pen name. Ugh. So I'm reading that, and like, I don't know, the writing style, the content of it is very interesting, because the setup is basically like a transgender woman, trans woman, but who detransitioned, so is back to like living as a male, and then his partner, who is a woman, and she's pregnant, and kind of supposed to be like them trying to have this life as like three people raising a baby. But the story is kind of less about that. It's more chaotic. And it jumps a lot between like past and present, and it's not always clear when it's past and present. And it focuses a lot more on like them and their like past relationships, which I didn't think it was going to. So it's like, I don't know. I'm still reading. I switched to the audiobook because just the writing style wasn't working for me. So I'm hoping to finish it soon. Because
is it more literary? Is it kind of dense, or is it just?
Yeah, it's definitely more literary, but it's not dense. It's just like, I don't know. I don't want to say choppy, but the writing is just, it's
a certain style.
Yeah, it's very unique. And sometimes I feel like I like fly through a part, and then another part I'm just like, why is this taking me so long to get through? And I feel bad saying this, but like, when there are certain books that are like acclaimed or about a certain thing, I feel less inclined to DNF it, because I don't want to, like, I feel like that's negative, or, being like, oh, you DNF that book. So I'm like, no, I'm going to give it, or I'm at least going to give it more time than I would another book. Like, I probably would have DNF'd something else, but I'm like, this is really kind of out of my comfort zone. I don't read a lot of like literary books. Never read a book about this topic or by a transgender author. So I'm like, no, I need to give it time and, make sure I give it a fair shake, I guess. So I'm only like 30% in. So I'm at least going to read like to the halfway mark and see.
I think, so I don't think the writing style is the same necessarily, but Colson Whitehead, I read Underground Railroad. My husband's read both that one and The Nickel Boys.
I read The Nickel Boys.
So yeah, and he said The Nickel Boys is even more so of the writing style, which is, and I saw somebody refer to it as like he's refraining from sensationalizing horrific things. Mm-hmm. And because his delivery is very upfront and very direct, and I don't want to say dry because it's like that has a negative connotation to it.
Mhm.
But it almost comes across as dry or like clinical. And I heard in the Nickel Boys it's even more so. It almost
Maybe
reads like a news story almost, but like
Yeah.
with a narrative, you know. And Underground Railroad, I mean, the book talks about some of the most horrific things imaginable. And it just like makes you really angry. But there's so little emotion in how it's told. If that
Yeah.
like I don't know if that's probably not the right way to put it because like there is emotion, but I almost feel like you don't really I don't know, maybe it's even commentary on the way that you're robbed of your humanity when you are treated as not a human. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's supposed to be representing that, maybe it's just his style.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where like you were saying, yeah, it's not super entertaining. I'm not like in Stormlight, every now and then you're like, oh, like can they be happy for a minute?
Yeah.
But like you get those heroic scenes where they're like flying through the air and awesome battles and stuff like that, and you're like, yeah, that's not really what you're gonna get in these ones.
Yeah.
Sometimes a bummer to read. You sometimes feel like it takes a long time to read them because I mean I have a habit of marathoning a book. When I start a book, a lot of times if I'm liking it, I just want to read it as quick as I can because I'm like obsessed with it. I want to consume it really quick. That's not the right way to put it. Not really quick, like I just want to be done with it, but I just don't want to stop reading it, right?
Mhm.
But with some of these books, I'm like, man, I would read 10 pages of Underground Railroad and then need to like take a break and then read a whole other book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, maybe it's something from being primarily like fantasy readers that were maybe more used to, I don't want to say, it's not like Brandon Sanders was like lyrical, but just more
Being entertained.
like prose like that. And so going to something literary, because I haven't read Underground Railroad. I did read Nickel Boys, but I listened to the audio, but it did feel more like almost like an audio of like a documentary because it was very like, here's what happened. I mean, I still thought it was like I want to say great story, not great, because it was like really heartbreaking, but incredibly like written. So maybe when you were saying like clinical and just like upfront, I feel like that's a good description of Detransition Baby because it's just very like blunt with a lot of words and like terms that maybe to someone who maybe is trans, it feels more normal. And to me, I'm just like, oh.
Well, I almost wonder, and I haven't read the book and I'm not transgender, but I feel like a lot of the negativity that is thrown at transgender people is rooted in like their emotions. Like, well, you just feel like this, like kind of thing like, oh, well, like, I guess I feel like a girl today, so I'll just be a girl. Like you see that rhetoric a lot and it's very mocking of like people's emotions are important and your mental health and all that, like all that is an important thing, but it gets dismissed in these situations. And I almost wonder if maybe I'm reading too much into it. Like I said, I haven't read the book, but I wonder if it's like to go against that, like it's not just an emotional thing. If that, maybe, I don't know if it's supposed
to because I think also because if I'm reading a book and I don't know how I feel about it, like I'll go look at like 3-star non-spoiler reviews just to get like someone to say what I'm feeling because I can't like say it. And so it is very, like I was saying, like chaotic, but someone was saying that like just kind of speaks to just all the different things that you go through as a trans person. And so there's just a lot of like language and scenes that to me are just like, wow, but it's like, this is kind of someone's reality. I don't know. It's very interesting. And so I want to keep reading it because, it's still fiction, but I still feel like I could benefit from reading it. So here we are trying to step outside of my comfort zone. But I know you earlier said you were like having like a fantasy, like kind of burnout. And I'm like, I have so many I need to read, but I'm like, I don't want to read those.
Well, so I read pretty much just fantasy. And by the way, I'm describing it as fantasy burnout. I'm not actually abandoning fantasy or anything like that. I do read mostly fantasy, and I'm not complaining whatsoever, but just by having a channel and talking about books and stuff, sometimes you get comments that are just like, why don't you branch out and like read other things? And then other times when you are branching out, it's like, I thought this was a fantasy channel or something. And you're like, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm inviting other people's opinions because I don't have to talk about stuff on the internet, right? But it's not that I don't want to read any fantasy. It's just that I think that when I have been jumping into something else, I've been enjoying it so much, and then I want more of that. And then I'm like, well, that's not fantasy. And I think so. An example, last year I read Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Talk about that writing style. Oh my gosh. Super incredible writer. And also not an easy book to read. I feel like it's just so sad. But then so that's like a memoir. Then I read, a lot of people recommended it to me, the one by Trevor Noah, Born a Crime.
Oh yeah, I want to read that.
I read that book so fast, and he narrates the audiobook too. And he's he's funny, so it's very different from Between the World and Me. Memoirs are interesting in that you get a mix of different writing styles. And so that one, he's a comedian, entertainer, so it was very entertaining. And his mom is just like such a powerful person. I don't know. But anyway, so then I decided to pick up Educated, which is another one I have right here. I just read it. Another one that a lot of people had recommended. And this was so good. And then I was like watching interviews of the author. Incredible book, and really tragic and really sad. But now I just want to read a bunch of memoirs. And I'm like, I have so many fantasy books that I still need to get to that I feel like I've committed to. And then I had to pick up a couple of these, nonfictions. And it also doesn't help that Sean reads a bunch of nonfiction and memoirs also. And then he'll be telling me about the things he's reading. And I'm like, I want to read that. And then I'm like, dang it, but I have all these other things that I need to read first.
The struggle is so real. I was like, oh, I could just try to balance. But I just get in moods where I'm like, I want to read all of this or all of this. And yeah, fantasy. I want to get back to Oathbringer, but I'm like, I also want to read romance, or I'm in the mood for like romance thrillers, really everything but fantasy. Even I'm like romance thrillers and like historical fiction or nonfiction, essentially things that are not a series. I'm like, oh, look at that, I finished that book. Woo, that's it. And not like, oh my God, I read this and there's 3 more.
Well, and I think also with things that are some form of nonfiction, right? Like memoirs or reading about certain issues or things like that. It has that literal connection to real life. So then you read it and then you go, like I was saying, I watched these interviews of this author, or when Sean is reading stuff about certain issues, then you look into it and you're like, oh my gosh, are more people not talking about this? And then you get really wrapped up in that. And I think I hate when people say that fantasy is an escape as if it's a negative thing, because I'm like, sometimes the world sucks and sometimes life is really hard and you need those moments to feel heroic, or you need these moments to see these people in this made-up world struggling with the same things that you're struggling with, and whatever it may be. Like, I think that I don't like when people dismiss that as insignificant, because it's, I think, very powerful. But at the end of the day, like, it is kind of fantasy is great because it can say a lot of the things that all these other genres say, but it can have dragons and magic, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's that you miss the, okay, now I'm going to look into this thing, or I'm going to look into this person and learn more about this, which, by the way, I meant to say this at the beginning, so I hope people are, going to watch this far, but like, India could use some help. Both of us have been talking about that. And so we'll leave a link in the description bar of this video so people can check out and donate and things. But there's so many real world issues. And I would never want anybody to feel like I'm implying that if you're reading fantasy, you're like not a grown up. When are you going to grow up and like read real books?
No.
Yeah. But I do think sometimes I will feel that on myself. Like, I'm over here reading all these like make-believe stories. And then I feel like I want to keep learning, I guess, is the best way to put it. And I think you're really good about that because you read a lot of different, don't you read stuff about like dead bodies?
Yes. And it's like before, it's really only since like the last kind of year. I've read the random memoir over the past years, like of people that I've liked or whatever. But it's only really like in the last year that I've gotten really into nonfiction. And I started really with, I was reading books about like forensic anthropology and like pathology. And then it was really Caitlin Dowdy's, which they're downstairs, her memoir of her working in a crematorium. And that just opened the floodgates. And then I kind of got into a mood and was reading more like sociology, like social issues kind of ones. And so I was reading a lot of those, and then I was feeling a little fatigued there. But yeah, I used to be like, oh, nonfiction's boring, and then figured out what kind of nonfiction I like to read, and then also that on audio is really good for me. But yeah, sometimes I'm like I love fantasy in the way like, yes, escapism, also magic is cool, dragons are awesome, you know, all the different worlds.
I think that this came from someone's brain.
Yeah. Look, not to talk about Brandon Sanderson again, but just the amount of things that man is always doing, I do not understand. Does he never sleep? It's like, he's like, I finished this one, but I'm working on this one, and then I'm working on this one, and I've planned all the way out to 2030. And I'm like, oh my God, how do you do this? But also that, and then there's that aspect of like, despite how negative it can be, the fandom side, because you can go look at, you know, people's videos on whatever, or back in my olden days when it used to just be like blogs or website, and you're like, oh my God. So there's that, but then sometimes I'm like, ooh, but I want to learn about this thing. So it's like this like push and pull, trying to balance both, but you know, there's still books. We're reading. Yeah. Do you have any, so you read, everyone's read Educated and I haven't.
So good.
I know that it's really good. Do you have any other ones? Do you plan to read next? Or
so a lot of people recommended Know My Name by Chanel Miller, which is the one about the girl. I mean, I feel bad. I just recorded a World Hoppers video and said this too. I feel bad talking about the subject matter, but she was at a party at a college and someone did things to her when she was like unconscious. And
is it that swimmer dude?
I think he was involved in athletics, but I don't know the whole situation that well, but basically it's her, like, it's her memoir, right? It's her talking about that incident and other things. A bunch of people recommended that to me. And there's one about, I think it's called When Breath Becomes Air, or When Air Becomes Breath, or maybe I have it mixed up.
When Breath Becomes Air, I think I have that one.
Yeah, so that one's about a surgeon who has lung cancer, I think, or something. A bunch of people recommended that. So I asked people on Instagram, I was like, hey, what are your memoir recommendations? And then I went to my local used bookstore and I tried to find as many as I could. And then there's some I couldn't find, but there's some about like someone who had lived in North Korea. I would really like to read that. And then it's not a memoir, but I really want to read Evicted. Sean loved that one, which is just about a guy who went around and essentially just talked to and learned about people's stories who had been evicted and what led to them being evicted. And it was like, Sean was blown away at some of like the shady stuff that goes down. And I really want to read that one too. And actually the person went to ASU, which is where Sean and I met, was at Arizona State. And there's a lot of homeless people around the university. And this guy went to ASU, and like, I think this is what I feel bad saying inspired him to do this work, but him just talking to these homeless people and stuff like that made him want to do research on what causes a person to become homeless and become evicted and things. And I know there's a whole part in the book, and I'm going to butcher it, so this is why I need to read it, but there's a whole part in the book that talks about domestic abuse calls being listed as like disturbances or something, like a noise complaint. Essentially, it gets listed under the same thing when people call like law enforcement. And the people who get the bill, I think, if I'm not mistaken, are essentially, it gets put on like the landlord. And if you're renting out to someone, they want to then put that on you. So you're like, wait, so if a woman's getting beaten, you're going to charge her for the police being called? You know, like what? And then so women then wouldn't call. And like law enforcement told the tenants, like, you need to figure out a way to like a solution to this, like, you know, in this one particular instance that the author was documenting, which again, please don't take this as fact, like read the book because it's in there. But the woman, the tenant, or the landlord person was like, I think you should just get a gun and like shoot the guy. And like they like forwarded that to law enforcement, and they're like, that's a good enough solution. So their solution to this problem of this woman, like, it was, why don't you just kill him, or something ridiculous as like self-defense. And I don't know, it was super sketchy. But then the number one in the research that he did, which is probably not surprising to people, like the number one group of people that are have the hardest time finding a place to live are single Black mothers. And the author pretty much never intervened. He usually would just kind of like sit back and document things and record conversations and stuff. There was one time a woman went in with her kids and was looking to see if they had an apartment she could stay in or something. And they're like, we have no listings available. And so he went in later that day and he's like, hi, I'm looking for a place. And he's like, you know, a single white guy or whatever. And they're like, let's show you what we've got. And he was just like, I think he called them out on it. And that was, I think, the one time that he intervened. But he also, there's a guy that had like an opioid addiction or something like that. And anyway, that whole book, I haven't read it. This is just secondhand from like talking to someone about it. And I'm so sorry if I have misrepresented anything, but
I'm currently downloading the audiobook. It was available at my library.
Somebody read it, and then we can rant about the world together.
I already know I'm going to be enraged. I mean, I already am. That made, I don't know why this made me think of that, but did you watch the, I don't know if you watch true crime stuff.
No.
Okay. Well,
as a kid, I would watch Forensic Files when I was little. I don't know why. When I was a kid, like my dad would go to sleep and I'm like, I have cable at Dad's house. And I'm like, what's on? And I would watch Forensic Files as like an 11-year-old.
My grandma would watch. She loved the ID channel. My mom watched I blame my mother for the reason that I'm into true crime, because she would watch Unsolved Mysteries. And so would I. And that propelled me. But there was a not well done documentary on Netflix called like the Cecil Hotel, which is about this really sketchy hotel in LA. I think it's in LA, which just has a history of lots of murders and such.
Oh, fun.
And I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, well, it's like it's like right down the road from Skid Row, which I've heard of in reference to LA. As like, a place where a lot of homeless people are, a lot of drugs. I literally thought it was like one street, one row, but it's like blocks. It's a huge area.
Wow.
And I was mind blown because I was like, I literally thought it was one street, and it's like this huge blocked in area where they kind of just like push people into that are homeless or have drug issues, mental health issues. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And then you walk out of that, walk a couple blocks, it's like downtown LA.
Yeah.
Like, love that.
Yeah, I mean, I that's true of Phoenix as well. I mean, Phoenix and a lot of California cities are like kind of similar, right? We're right next door. But Phoenix is like parts of so Phoenix doesn't go up, it goes out. So you talk about downtown Phoenix and then like the greater Phoenix area, which is the suburbs and whatever. But downtown Phoenix is so weird because you'll be driving down the same street and for a while it's like pretty clearly like kind of sketchy area, kind of run down. And then you drive a little further and it's like super cute, swanky, hip restaurants and then like really big houses and it's like LA, right? LA, you'll walk and you'll see some like dump basically of a house. Yeah. And a little later you see this mansion and it's so weird that it's like all right there. So yeah, I don't know. It's like literal, I feel like it represents America. Yeah.
In
a weird way.
America. Love that. What a great place where dreams come true, right? I get it's like I say this too about like nonfiction and like not every also this one kind of made me mad, the one I just finished. I feel like everyone makes me mad in some way. But I'm just like I'm learning more, but I feel like the more I learn, the angrier I get about things because I'm just like
that's why fantasy's great.
Yeah, exactly. Because even the ones like about death, because she talks about like the funeral industry and how shady that is. And I'm like, damn it, is there no escape? So I'm like,
everywhere.
I'm just like looking, I'm like, is there like a short? But I don't have any short fantasies. Everything's a series or it's.
Oh, you should read Queen of Blood. It's short.
Queen of Blood? What's that?
Yeah.
What's that by?
It's by Sarah Beth Durst, and it's a forest setting. It's really cool, and there are these spirits that kind of, their instincts are to protect the forest, and then also because humans, by living in the forest, kind of harm the forest, then their other instinct is to kill humans. And there's a magic user, it's always a woman who becomes queen, who holds the spirits in check, because the spirits are needed to make the forest function. But something's going wrong because the spirits are like randomly killing people, and you're like, what's that about? It's interesting. I didn't love the end of the trilogy. I was like, I didn't love that ending, but a lot of people like it, but they're really short. They're like 300 something pages. They read really fast. So they're fun.
Is Sarah Beth Durst, I think, does she have the Bone Maker that came?
Yeah.
Okay. I've been having so many books come in from the library, and I'm like, oh, delay. I can't write now. And then I delay it for like 7 or 14 days, and then in 2 weeks I'm like, y'all are back again? Yes. Like I didn't delay them all at the same time. But I'm just like, I'm trying to have a balance between books that I borrow from the library and like physical books that, so I'm trying to, but sometimes it doesn't work.
I always feel bad. We don't need to get into the consumerism conversation that pops itself up all the time, but I always feel bad because my local used bookstores are great. They give you a lot of store credit. They have stuff for on sale. And so I'm like constantly taking books in and getting new books and not brand new, but you know what I mean? Like new to me. Mm-hmm. And I always feel bad because there's so many, libraries exist, but some people don't have good libraries, or they're nowhere close to a library. They don't have good bookstores. And a lot of times Western countries are the ones that publishing caters to. And so the literal like physical book is easier to access, or even just accessibility in general is easier when you're in Western countries. And I always feel so bad for people that's like, they got to save up, to get.
I've heard of some of these costs of like, getting a book in English, or if they like, sometimes it takes a long time to get translated, and just like all of these different things that I never thought of before. Really like, being in the book community and just thinking, yeah, everybody can get books. Like everybody's got a library, and it's like, no. And it's like, even in America, if you're like in a rural area or you live in a conservative area, so your library doesn't have a lot of liberal writing things or whatever. So yeah, sometimes I'm like, wow, somebody on my book haul was like, wow, the consumerism. And like, yeah, I sure did consume a lot of books. I'm sorry. But then they comment on another video and they're like, oh, I love this. And I'm like, okay. But I'm always like, I'm helping the author, stimulating the economy. I don't know. I'm always like,
I'm like I said, we don't need to, go into it too in depth. And my thing is, if you don't like the way somebody does something, you don't have to follow them. Like, don't watch videos or content you don't like, and that's not an offensive thing. It's entertainment. So if you're not entertained, or it doesn't make you happy, then like dip. That's fine. So if you don't like people who do book hauls, like no big deal, or don't watch the book haul, don't watch that person. But I also do think I was so excited when I saw one of my local used bookstores like found my channel, and they're like, thanks so much for the shout out. And so because I had mentioned their channel or their store, and I was like, yay, because it's a local business with like, you know what I mean? That's cool. And then like you were saying, if nobody, it's a balance, right? If nobody buys books, then authors like are never going to be able to keep writing their books. Like we talked, it's full circle. Like we talked about at the beginning, if nobody buys the first books,
we don't
want the rest of the series.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they base a lot of information off of like pre-order and like first week sales and stuff like that. So
I can't remember who it was, but it was an author on Twitter was saying like, talking, because how some people, and I'm sometimes like this, like they're like, I don't want to read the book until the series is complete. Right. And they were saying like, I understand that was this really helpful if you're, you're buying and reading the first book so that the series can become complete. And I'm like, because I've been like that, like, oh, I've been scorned by George R. Martin, and I'm like, I don't want to wait.
Right. No, I think that's a big thing too, is people, and like the thing is, you're asking a person to essentially reread your book, more than likely, because if by the time your sequel comes out, it's been a little bit, then they're going to have to go back and reread, which is time away from another book or another author they could be supporting. So that's why I don't feel, because Booktube is essentially my job at this point, I'm like, okay, well, I feel like I am the person who can do this. I would never want somebody to feel guilty because they're not buying brand new books or something, right? But I'm like, I'm in a position where I can, and this is essentially my job. So I, a lot of times, don't feel too bad now if I'll buy a book that sounds good and it's the first book in a series, but then don't get to it for a little bit, because I'm like, well, at least the thing I think is beneficial about book hauls is that even if you haven't had the chance to read the book yet, somebody else might hear about it and think that sounds cool, and then they'll check it out from their library, or they'll buy it, or whatever that they do, and then they might get to the book before you, which is in turn kind of helping the author out, you know, even if you don't read it right away. But there's cons, of course, right? Capitalism is a thing.
We hate it. I hate it. The another thing was, in not my last, like the last like actual tea video, I was like, well, what's the solution? And obviously the only thing would be to boycott, like if you were buying from publishers, but then that affects not even just the authors, it affects so many people. And some, I saw a couple of comments like, yeah, boycott major publishing, only support like indie. And I'm like, that sounds great in theory, but that doesn't just affect the CEO. Actually, it would probably affect him the least. It would affect everybody else.
Well, a couple of things will happen. One is people, I think, sometimes don't realize how big publishing is outside of BookTube and Book Twitter. Because there are so many times that people who have workbook clubs will be like, wait, what's the thing about American Dirt? And people be like, because to BookTube, people were like, everybody knows about this. Yeah. But lots of people don't, or lots of people don't know anything about the Harry Potter stuff. And so, which, you know, we're not talking about that stuff, but just like literally the whole idea of knowing about it. A lot of people don't know anything about it, and they wouldn't even know. What was that?
Like, we're very small. Like, it seems like we're huge, but
because it's affecting us, and everybody is inherently selfish, and they think if it's affecting us, then it's a thing for everyone, and it's like, no. So
I'm like, it's on my Twitter timeline. Everyone must know.
Yeah. And the thing is, if we collectively on BookTube and Book Twitter and Bookstagram or whatever, if we're all like, we're gonna boycott all these major publishers, okay, that's not going to hurt them that badly. It's probably not. And at the end of the day, too, there are going to be people who don't participate. And then you're going to turn this into a whole like, oh, like I love this channel because they don't fall for this like cancel culture stuff. Yeah. And then that channel is going to get boosted. And then eventually people are going to be like, well, now nobody wants to watch my videos because I'm not talking. And it's eventually not even going to be about
work. And it just wouldn't. And but yeah, because that, like, I had a friend who was in like her local library book club, and one of their books was American Dirt. No one had heard about that. I've met people who are like, I had no idea what happened with HP. And just even I think Ashley at Bookish Realm, so she's a youth services librarian, she was like, the books we think are big on BookTube and then out in like the real world, or what is being checked out from our libraries, like, it's totally different. Or you think a book is super hype, and you can go look at like even just Goodreads, and you're like, what? There's only like 10,000 reviews, and this other book is like 500,000, and you're like,
I feel like when A Song of Race and Ruin came out, it seemed like everybody was talking about it, and then I don't even think it has 10,000 ratings. Well, but then Blood Song, which I feel like nobody talks about, has way more. I'm going to look at the numbers too, so I'm not talking out of my butt.
I'm upset at how few Amari has. It's fine, but like, I'm like, I need to get outside of BookTube. It is my mission to spread the gospel of Amari and the Knight Brothers. I think it was at like maybe 4,000.
How many?
Let me see. I feel like it was really low. When I read it in January, it was low. Okay, Amari only has 3,743 ratings.
Yeah, so Song of Race and Ruin is under 10, and I feel like everybody was talking about it when it came out. And then something like Blood Song, which I love, which I'm like, nobody ever talks about Blood Song. Let's look at it. I mean, granted, Blood Song's older, but it has over 78,000. So
And I've never heard about that until you talked. Okay, which one? I feel like I'm getting books confused. Is this the one where the man tells a story about his life, or is it like?
That's right.
Okay, I thought there was another book you were talking about where it was like children learn. Oh, I cannot remember. I feel like you were talking about this book. It was fantasy, and it was about like something to do with children learning or something. And I can't remember. I don't know.
Oh, it's gonna drive me crazy. What?
Like children, like I don't know. They had to like they were in a group and had to like learn. I feel like it was fantasy.
What have I talked about?
I'm like, let me see on your Goodreads. Can I find your Goodreads?
I don't go on Goodreads. I never use it. That's the problem.
I hate Goodreads. I use it to update my things, but like, I'm sorry to anyone who's watching. If you sent me a friend request, like there became too many and I become overwhelmed and like I haven't gotten to it. I'm sorry.
I don't think I've ever. Maybe before I even started a booktube channel, maybe I accepted a couple. I don't think I have any. Yeah, I don't. Goodreads is whatever. What the heck book are you talking about? Do you remember anything else? Are you sure it's not Fireborn?
No, it wasn't that one. I would know. It definitely was not Fireborn. Or is Ninth Rain your other one that you've had selling off the shelves?
I love Ninth Rain. Oh, that's another one where talk about accessibility. It like went out of print for a little bit, and the author on Twitter was like, "What's happening? Why am I getting all these like US people asking about this series?" And I was like, I think I had something to do with that. But then
is it published in the UK originally?
Yes, and if you go on Amazon UK and you try to get the ebook, because they don't have the ebook on US Amazon, so if you try to get the ebook from UK, it's only available to like its UK people who live in the UK. And I'm like, it's digital. Why would you do that? It's digital. Make it accessible to like anybody who has some kind of device. So then some people who I think it's back in print, but I'm like, way to shoot the author in the foot. What the heck?
Yeah. Dang it.
Anyway, it's gonna. I mean, Age of Assassins followed a younger protagonist.
Now I'm going back through your videos. Was it a fantasy standalone? Maybe it was underrated. Oh, you have so many videos I've watched. Damn it. I'm gonna have to. I don't know. I for some reason thought that book was Blood Song. I'm sorry.
Blood Song. Okay, you know what? Maybe you know what? I think you're thinking the same thing. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Blood Song follows a man who's telling his life story, and he starts out as a kid, and you feel bad because it's like Navy SEALs but for kids, basically, where he's going.
Yes.
Okay, we figured it out. It's the same book.
Ooh, that was gonna drive me crazy. So is Blood Song? Is that? Yes, it's a series. How many?
I've only read book one. I want to go back through and reread book one. I've heard mostly people don't like the rest of the series, which is a bummer. But then occasionally people will be like, people are exaggerating. It's not that bad. But it goes from being mainly a single point of view story to multiple point of view, which I guess a lot of people didn't like. And they're like, why am I following these other people? But there's, I think, like a continuation series, and people are like, okay, that was good. The new one in that. And then he's got a brand new series coming out, which is exciting.
Gosh.
So, but yeah, it's kind of a more, I mean, I almost want to call it dry. I feel bad because I said that earlier about another one, but it's like not Laini Taylor pretty, right? Laini Taylor's writing is like whimsical. It's not whimsical at all, but it's also not simple or kind of straightforward like Sanderson's storytelling. I feel like the writing itself is very straightforward. So I wouldn't say it's not dense or anything like that, but it's also not like a fun writing style. But the occasional funny thing will happen, and it's so funny because of the contrast with how serious the rest of it feels. And I don't know, it just like there were a few times that I'm like, that was hilarious. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I liked the narrator a lot too for the audiobook. But I read it years ago, So I need to go back and reread it.
I love Strange the Dreamer, but I typically do not like that like purpley prose, which is
exactly
super weird. I was like, why am I enjoying this? So yeah, so in between that and like Sanderson, which is fine to me, his writing. But see, again, I just have this never-ending list of things that I'm like not gonna get to, and then I start spiraling in these thoughts of like, oh my god, I'm never gonna get to read all the books.
Do you feel like doing any kind of wrap up or TBR or like books I want to read this year videos makes you realize how quickly time passes? Like you're like, I'm getting so old, and it's because you're like, I can't believe I know, isn't it so annoying?
Look, when I'm upset. How is it May of 2021? Like, I'm literally upset. I do not know what happened. It was, yeah, because I'm just like, what do you mean there's wrap-ups of what? And it's like, because, you know, I am the worst. I don't bulk film ever. And so I'm like, oh, crap. Now I have to film a wrap-up again. I just filmed one for March.
Well, you know what's really dark to think about is when you think about Starlight Archive being projected for 10 books and you think about how long it takes him to write them and you're like, sir,
I'll be in my what? I'm not even going to say it out loud, okay? I don't even want to know.
So sad. I saw like a review, I think it was a positive review from an older reader who's like, it bums me out a little bit that I'm not going to live to see the end of the series. And I was like, that's so sad. Man.
That makes me think. I was when I was in Washington in a Half Price Books looking at like George R.R. Martin books, and this older gentleman came up and we were just talking about, you know, waiting for the next one, and he was like, yeah, I'm just worried that I won't be able to see the finish in my lifetime. And I was like,
no, time is I've always had to, like, sorry to get really sad and dark, but because my dad was quite old for a daughter my age, and so growing up when my parents divorced, I had like anxiety about the fact that like I had an older dad and I'm like, I'm not going to get to see him as much as everybody else gets to see their dads. And I was like, kind of, if I got invited to like birthday parties and stuff, because they split up when I was 10, if it was on a weekend, I was supposed to go see my dad, I would always go see my dad. Cause I had this realization, like, I'm not going to talk to these people when I'm an adult. Like these friendships aren't going to last, but like, this is my dad, you know? So I would go see him. I spent as much time with him as possible. And then only for the healthcare system to like totally fail him last year. Just like that, I feel like it took years of my life to stop being anxious about like time, essentially. And then I feel like last year, like a lot of that anxiety came back. And then after my dad passed away, to then have I had to have my appendix taken out and have emergency surgery. But like lying there in the hospital when they didn't know at first what was wrong, because I did not have the typical symptoms of, I was like, I mean, I just am uncomfortable. I've been uncomfortable for like over a day now. I don't know what's going on. They were like, poke the spot. And they're like, does this hurt? And I'm like, not any more than any other spot on my stomach. And then it was, you know, they had to take my appendix out. But when I was sitting there, I was like, well, they never really figured out what was wrong with dad. And then I'm like, is this it for me now? Is this like, am I not going to see like my husband again? We went to the hospital casually thinking it was a minor, and like the spiraling thoughts, and then being like, this is what it was like for dad, just sitting in the hospital for days on end. I wasn't there for days on end, but just meaning like being there for just a little bit. Mm-hmm. I was like, imagine, because one of the times my dad was there for 17 days and we weren't allowed to visit him. So he's older. So it's not like he had an iPad or an iPhone to like do stuff on. And then the elderly, especially if they've had head injuries in the like last, you know, few years, which he'd had because it was a really bad car accident he was in. So they say that like and the elderly do well with routine and schedule, which my dad definitely had. And he was very sharp, but that amount of time on all of those drugs and all those things, it was like totally throwing off everything for him. And it was just like, apparently there are hospitals that are trying to, and this is like, I'll turn the negative into something nice. There are hospitals that are trying to have rooms for elderly where they have like a cozy chair and like it's a cozier environment to try and replicate like their routine as much as possible or something. And I'm like, that's nice. I'm glad that something like that is, because like, I don't know. Anyway, why did I start talking about that?
I've worked in one, and you know, Yeah, that would be
time. That's what we were talking about. Time.
Time is my mom used to say it like, time just flies by. But of course, growing up, it's like, oh my God, I just can't wait to get out of the house. And time seemed to go so slow. And now I'm like, every time it's like, it's too much. And when I start to think about it, I just start like, I'm like, oh my God, so there's only this many years until, and then, okay.
You want to know what really flipped me out, like really freaked me out, is after I had my appendix taken out. I was like, if this were just a short time ago, I'd be dead. Because, you know what I mean? Like medical advancements and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that long ago that I would have just died. And then I'm like, I wouldn't have made it past 28 years old. And then I'm thinking about my husband. Actually, no, I wouldn't have made it past 27 because I was 27 at the time. My husband had that when he was a kid. So I'm like, I would have never met him. And I just started having like all these dark thoughts, like I should be dead now too. And then like,
I just,
everything. Like, for Booktube, but this.
Yes, Booktube, so great. But no, it really, with coming to like filming and stuff, because most of the times I feel like the only day I really know what day it's going to be is Tuesday, because that's usually when I post my tea videos. And so like, it's just whatever day. But then when I start seeing wrap-ups, I'm like, wait, another month went by?
Well,
I don't know what day it is, but I don't know like what day of the week it is. Or like number.
I'm like, month. It's already.
This last year and a half has just been, I'm like, huh? What? I know that we've had a lot of Tuesdays. And it's been also bonkers to me because we got here in Sicily July 2019. And it seemed this is a 3-year assignment for him. And we're almost at 2 years. And so we would be leaving next July. And a year and a half of that has been just in the house. And I'm like, so much lost. And like, obviously that's a first world problem compared to, people who literally lost their lives and their, or health. But it's just like, last year seemed like a really long year, but also a really fast year.
Yes.
Every year I feel like it's
crazy to me too.
When I walk in space and it's just moving too fast.
I know. And it dawned on me the other day because my dad passed away in the beginning of August. And I was like, it's been that long? Because it feels like it just happened. You know what I mean? Like and everybody says too, like the pain of losing a loved one never really goes away, but like it gets better. And it's weird because I lost my dad before my mom lost either of her parents. So my dad's parents died before I was born. So I never knew the grandparents on his side, but my mom's parents are alive. They're not, my grandma's not doing well, which I'm like, when are we going to have good news? And my mom just had to put Leo down, which was really, really sad, which was our dog. But it's just, sorry, Luna just came in and now I'm distracted panting because it's hot outside. But what the heck was I saying? I got distracted by my dog. Just like, what was it? Oh, how much time has passed?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's weird because I don't know another person that I'm really close to who's lost a parent. And I always knew I'm like, I'm going to lose my dad at a relatively young age. And what was frustrating is my dad was super healthy and super sharp. And like, nobody would have ever thought like, whoa, that guy's in his 70s. Like, I mean, he had skin cancer, so his skin didn't look like super youthful, but he was so like, he always walked real straight and was always out working on stuff and real friendly. Yeah. And so it was just one of those things though, where you're like, for so long, everybody was convincing me like, no, your dad's going to live to be like 100. You don't need to be anxious. You don't need to be worried. But it's weird to experience that and feel like there's nobody really close to you who knows what that's like. And when I realized it's been 9 months, I'm like, how? Because I still like don't sleep well. I still think about him all the time. I still think about like all these other things that they're like, it's frustrating. And so I feel bad because I definitely feel like I dropped the ball on like posting regularly and like reading and stuff. And then I'm like, I hate being that person that says I'm going to do something and then like I don't do it, or then I get to it really late. I hate being like that. And I still don't like being like that. I'm not trying to excuse it, but I'm also like, hey, sometimes you have days where just like you didn't sleep all night, because you just like, we're sad about dad. And the next day you might just need to like try to take it slow and don't stress that you're behind on emails.
Those daggone emails. And while 9 months in like normal things sounds like a long time, for that kind of loss is not a long time. Like, I lost my grandma 2 years ago, two and a half. God, I can't math. It was like right before Christmas, 2018. So is that 2 years? Yeah, like 2.5 years ago. And there's still moments, and that's not my parent. So 9 months is nothing. And yeah, so I can't imagine, I haven't gone through that. I had a cousin I'm not as, but he lost his mom when we were like in 2008. And so I know he had that feeling too, because I'm like, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm here for you, but I can't relate. So it's just something like, yeah, they say time heals all wounds, but like they just get a little duller, I think.
Yes, I think it's like, I don't know, it sounds cheesy, but the best way I can describe it is like, obviously if you get a cut that hurts, it hurts, right? And then, or even maybe like a broken bone. You know how sometimes depending on like broken bones and stuff, like, like, oh, like my shoulder never really quite healed up. It still hurts when it's cold outside or whatever. It's like, it's lingering. It's not fresh, but it's like, or a cut, it hurts when you first get the cut, but like the scar is always going to be there.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm motioning here. I don't have any scars up here.
Like, I've been cut so deeply. Yeah.
I always joke that like, do you know what tech neck is?
Yes.
So I am like kind of self-conscious about my tech neck, that line here. And sometimes if I've been using a lot of dry shampoo, because my dry shampoo is dark because I have dark hair, it'll like get in there. And I'm like, man, I look like I never take a bath or I never clean myself. And it looks like I was decapitated and then someone like sewed my head down.
So I've heard of tech neck just like in like we're staring at our phones or screens all day. But today this like what is she? Is she an esthetician? I don't know. She's like a skincare somebody I follow on Instagram. She was like, how do you get rid of your like tech neck lines? So I didn't know anyone was actually concerned about like lines. And she was like, you don't. Your neck is meant to crease. Like, yes, like tech neck, like people can get pain and like, overextension. But I was like, I guess there are companies now who are trying to make like creams and things for it. And I'm like, oh God, of course. But I'm always like, okay, maybe I should be on Twitter like this. Instead of being like this. I'm like, because I have a habit of being like this, but then I'm in the bed like this and can't tell you how many times I've smacked myself in the face with this daggone phone. It's embarrassing.
Sean's done like, or he'll be reading and then he drops the book. I can't sleep like that. I don't fall asleep easily at all. So it's never happened to me, but I've watched it happen to Sean. So.
Andrew has literally, I have like these videos. He's been like playing Candy Crush on his phone and I'm like talking and the last thing he's replying and I'll look over and he's just like, fall asleep mid Candy Crush. He was in like, so he plays Xbox and he has like a separate chair that he like gets stupidly close to the TV and plays. And he was like, our internet here is terrible. So like every time he plays, he has like to reset the internet. And so like I was like reading and I kept looking up and like the screen's not changing. That's so weird. Like why hasn't he like gotten on his game? And I like finally I'm like, Andrew, like I throw stuff at him, nothing. And like finally like go over there and he's just like hand on the controller, headset on, and he's just asleep. And I do not understand. I cannot fall asleep like that, but he can just, he'll say good night and be asleep. And I'm like, my mind.
Yeah, Sean's like that too. My mom, old fashioned like thoughts. And so my mom's like, that's because women are like, they always are thinking about something.
Yes.
Men feel like,
I'm just like, and with my mind, it's anything from a random comment to something I said to somebody 7 years ago, depending on the day. So I'm just there.
You like, I don't know if you do this, but because I like to write, I'll be like playing through scenes in my head, or I'll play through like, do you do this where you like fantasize about telling people off? Do you ever do that?
Yes. Or either beforehand, or if I like even a disagreement, or like even if it wasn't like something serious with somebody, or like even with Andrew, I'm like, damn, I could have said this at that moment. And yes, about telling people off. Yes, especially when I used to like work, I used to just fantasize about like my epic speech because I was gonna quit mid shift. I never did. I'm like, this is what I would say, and I would storm out and it'd be great. I never did. I always worked and put in my 2 weeks. Ugh, gross. Yeah, there's always just something. There's just always something. I cannot just, it's rare unless I'm like, usually if I'm trying to read and I'm like sleepy, because I like to read on my stomach, even though my body hates it, but that's how I like to read. I've sometimes fallen asleep like that, but like I can't just like standing up or sitting up just randomly fall asleep. I don't understand.
I sleep on my stomach, so that's how I like to sleep. But I can't sleep unless it's okay. I realize how high maintenance this sounds, but like I cannot sleep sitting up. So on planes, like forget it.
I can't sleep.
No, I can't sleep, and I get dizzy and I get motion sickness. So then reading on planes. So I'm just sitting there like
oh my gosh, you can't even read. Ooh.
I'll try, but then okay, this is so stupid, but because I was out of town recently, I had 3 flights in 7 days, and not like a layover in a flight. Like I went one place and packed up, went to another place, packed up, and then came home. And none of the flights were extraordinarily long, thank goodness. But I get like self-conscious that I'm gonna miss when they ask me about my drink. Like as they like walk by, I'm just always afraid, like I gotta make sure I'm ready for them to like, let them know I really would like 7-Up or whatever. Like I don't want to miss it because it's like an occasion on the plane, because otherwise I'm usually just sitting there. Sometimes I can get away with like if they have movies available or something, I will get nauseous even then, but like if I try really hard to just stare at like one spot.
Yeah.
But flying to Iceland and Ireland, they're about, not too far from each other. So both those flights were very long. And yeah, those, especially flying back from, I think it was flying back from Ireland, I had the worst, my ears hurt so bad. That's never happened, where like like your ears pop and stuff. Mm-hmm. I was in so much pain. I don't know why it was like this one particular flight. But then I also got really nauseous, and I don't know.
I've had that happen one time. Luckily, it was only like a 3-hour flight, but I was getting a sinus infection, but it hurt my ears. Oh, I was just crying on the plane. But when I first started flying, which never in my childhood, because we didn't go anywhere far enough to need to fly, it was fine. I could get on a plane, knock out, whatever. As I get older, I can no longer sleep on planes, and my anxiety has just skyrocketed. So even though I consider myself Christian adjacent, I have a playlist for takeoff and descent on planes, and it's like all gospel music. And I'm just like listening to it, trying to breathe, because I'm just like, this is
I also, like, before a flight, I'll be like, Lord, please keep us safe. I'd like to see my family again.
Yes.
These people all seem nice. Like, please protect us.
Yes, please, Jesus.
Okay, I have to say, I recently flew into Dallas. They have like kind of a small airport. And I'd been to Texas once before because my sister lives in Texas, but she lives in Austin, which is kind of a different vibe. And when I got to Dallas, I was like, oh, this is the stereotypes. Like I'm going to call it the food court had like Whataburger, Dickey's barbecue. What was it? There's like I'm like, yeah, this is Texas. People were like picking people up in massive pickup trucks and like honking aggressively. Yeah. I'm like, cool. I'm really excited to be here.
Did you go to a Buc-ee's while you were in there?
No.
Oh my God. Most of Andrew's family lives in Texas, but they live down in College Station, which is closer to Houston. And they in Texas, I think they may be in Florida now or something, but they're like a rest stop gas station.
Oh, the gas station, that's huge, right?
Yes.
Okay, yes. I have been to one years ago when I went to Austin.
My favorite.
They smell like t-shirts.
They're beautiful. Okay, all the ones I have been to, one, they're huge. There's like 40 gas pumps. There's like 30 bathroom stalls, and they're always clean, and somebody's cleaning them.
Grocery store.
Such good food. Like, they had these brisket tacos. I was like, yes, please. They have all these candies and pickled things. They have home decor t-shirts. I have a Texas shirt that says, all right, all right, all right, that I got from there. That's like my when I go, I'm like, if we don't go to Buc-ee's, this trip was worthless. So
Yeah, I did go. Now that as soon as you started talking, I was like, oh yes, I have been to one. I didn't go this last time, but when I went to Austin, yeah, I will say it's really interesting the couple times I've been out of the country to, like when we went to Iceland, first off, Reykjavik, the capital, is not very big. And then I think it's the smallest capital of any European country or something. And then they have what they call, like, maybe not them, but like it's kind of nicknamed the northern capital. I'm going to say it wrong, but like Akureyri, which is up north. And then everything else is tiny. So at one point, our van heater stopped working, which was a problem because it was a road trip and it was like meant to sleep in, and we're in Iceland and the heater broke. So we're like, so they told us the next day, we like shivered all night. And the next day they were like, are you guys by Vik? Or I think that's how it's pronounced. It's Vik. And we're like, yeah, we're pretty close. And they're like, okay, just the last house on the right, just turn in there. And so like, that's a mechanic. So take the van to them and see if they can fix it. Like, and we're like, okay. And it literally was the last house on the right. And like, we got there and Sean was like, it's not like a obvious place of business, right? So he just like kind of walked into their garage, and there are these guys like after hours working on their cars, and they're like, oh, hey, what's up? And he was like, I was told to bring my van here. And they're like, okay. And like, everybody's really chill. And then they looked at the van to determine that they couldn't fix the heater. So then they had to drive all the way out to us another van and then drive that one back. But anyway, that's just to give you an idea of how small everything is. And that's still like one of the major places on the map. It's this like tiny place. But as we kept driving, like the east coast of Iceland is a lot of fishing villages. There's not a lot of touristy things over there. Everything closes when people are done for the day. Like, so I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And we seriously stopped, I think, like 4 different fishing villages before we finally found a place that was open. And I'm talking about like 4:30 p.m., 5 p.m., not like late at night. We finally found a place. And it's like small, but it's like a little gas station plus a restaurant. And they had like bathrooms, and it was also a convenience store. And like, but it's small. And that's what a lot of their gas station, like convenience store things are. It's like all combined. And that whole section of the drive, I kept looking for reindeer because it said like, like reindeer or whatever. And I never saw one until I got to this place and there were reindeer on the menu. And I'm like, if I eat a reindeer now, I'm not going to see a reindeer later. So
I want to go to Iceland. So we've flown there. It was just like a layover. We were flying to Switzerland, but like, I want to go. I follow this girl who's an American living in Iceland right now. And she posts all stuff like how you can come live in Iceland. Like she's just there on like a student visa or something. And she's like, if you have an American passport and a COVID vaccine, you can come to Iceland and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh, I just want to go somewhere. And I really want to go there, but like, I don't want to go by myself, but
I'll meet you there. I'll show you all the places we should go. I want to go again. I'll show you all the best places to go.
Incredible. I mean, I know the conversion, like it's expensive, but
okay, you should look up the Icelandic krona, I think it's called. Yeah. Because have you seen to buy something that's like, hold on, let me look up the conversion.
Not recent, because like when we went was 2017, 2018? We were just in the airport and looked at like a sweater, and I think it was ridiculous how much.
It looks like thousands, right? Okay, yeah. So let's say that something in the US is, or the conversion, let's say it would be like $22, right? So that says 2,744.94 Icelandic krona. So every time we would buy food, it would look like that, where we're like, I don't know how much I just spent. We'd like try to look at our credit card statement later, like, how much did I just spend?
When the big conversions, it's, but in the reverse, in like Eastern Europe, because I've been like to Poland and Czech Republic, when it's the other way, when it like it goes in your favor. You're like, I feel like I'm giving you nothing, but you're not spending as much money.
I feel like it's worse because you think you're not spending that much, and then you realize you just spent $50. Where in Iceland, it looks like you're spending thousands, and you just spent like $10.
I want to give you. Oh, I miss these things. Travel. Who is she? I'm like, love when I got my passport, like in 2013, which is bonkers that it's so close to me needing a new one. I was like, let me get extra pages in it because it was before I studied abroad. And I was like, because I'm going to get all these stamps, not knowing that when you fly in between the EU, you don't get a stamp. And I'm just so upset. She's just sitting in the room collecting dust.
I don't even know where mine is.
I only know because like I have two, like I have a government one and a government issued one, and then like my tourist one. But yeah, I'm like, well, I did get a Morocco stamp because I went in October before the Rona, and then mine when we came over to Italy. But that's it.
There's so many places I want to go, but yeah, I'll totally go to Iceland with you. It'll be so fun. It'll be so fun.
Okay, if you could go, you and Sean, where's the first place you would go, like out of America?
There's so many. So I want to go to Japan. I want to go that Lauterbrunnen or whatever it's called in Switzerland. Have you seen pictures? It's fairy tale land. It's so annoying.
I think I know yes.
There's like a waterfall and like a town right there, and people like bring cows in with bells on, and you're just like, what? Is this heaven? This is heaven, I guess. But yeah, Japan and Switzerland. I at some point would love to go to I've never been to South America, right? So I think it'd be really fun to go there. But like those are the next two, I would say. Hold on. I really want to go to Norway. The thing is, Sean's like, Norway is kind of like Iceland. And I'm like, I know, but I want to go because my heart belongs in the cold, like I live in the desert and the cold is just, it's such a different, you like feel like you're in another land or that really are. I mean, you feel like you're in another planet. Iceland,
very different. I mean, I haven't even been there, just looking at it. It's funny because I am a woman of the African continent. I do not like the cold. Andrew loves the cold, so I'm always freezing in here because the AC is always down so low. I still want to visit those places. It's funny, my friend and I were like, we're going to move to Norway and get like houses by the lake. And I'm like, yeah, me and Nigel are going to have to get some really big coats because we're not built for that weather. But I really want to go to Scandinavia. But out of Scandinavia, I think Norway would be my top, even though I'd go to Sweden as well, Denmark. I need off of this island. I just really do. Off of this
island. Go to Iceland. Just go to a different island.
Yes.
It's really small. People don't realize how small it is, but we went around the whole country when we were there. So
how long did it take you?
Well, we were there for 2 weeks, but we actually I have this binder of like an itinerary for when we were there, like planned it all out. I printed out pictures. It's really cute. I still have it. But we actually at one point kind of backtracked because this one waterfall we wanted to see, the road was flooded, so we couldn't go to it. And another waterfall we wanted to see the path, like the hiking. There's a part where there's like a rope bridge to go across, and the whole thing was underwater. And you're like, well, I don't think we're going to do that. But, there was one time where we kind of, we were near Reykjavik area, and then we went back on the western coast up north to this mountain that I'm sure you've seen in pictures. It's like this kind of, it's very pointed, and there's a waterfall. I'll send you pictures later. It's a very iconic image. We went there, and then we went right back. The southern coast, if you do anything in Iceland, I feel like just drive the southern coast and just, it's great. It's so good. Waterfalls everywhere. Literally, the ocean is on your right. And there's waterfalls with cute little houses on the left. Everywhere.
Have you seen this girl that I follow, so she's there right now, since their volcano was erupting recently, and people, they've been hiking up to really close, Mount Etna is always erupting. I'm not going up there, but it looks really cool in Iceland. They're getting a little too close for comfort for myself, but I want to go there so very bad, but also yes to Japan.
Yeah. I mean, we got to go with Jessie, right? Jessie May, because she lived there.
Yes. How long did she live there?
I feel like her formative years, like, sorry, Jessie, if you, your age is wrong, but I think it was like 11 to 18 or something, or 10 to 18, something like that. I think she lived there for 8 years. So, yeah. And she, I mean, and Alan lived there for a little bit too, as part of his study abroad. Like, I think he was studying, sorry, I've been eating too many pita chips. International politics, I think, was his degree.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he went to Japan.
I mean, there's military bases there, so there's like a possibility. I wouldn't be mad at it. I'm like, I don't want to go back to America. So I prefer to go to South Korea or Japan before I went home to the States.
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, it's like, I feel like I love my country the way people love their children, even when their children get into trouble. You know, you're like, I still love you, but like, could you not? And that's how I feel about America.
I mean, I miss a lot of things like Target and Costco.
I do like Target.
You know, my family too, sure. Waffle House, but certain things I'm like.
Oh, when we went to Iceland, we frequented KFC quite a few different times. It's weird. The fast food that you will see in other countries. Like, I feel like everybody expects McDonald's, but it's not always McDonald's. Like, there's a lot of Subways and KFCs.
Yes. Also, randomly, Burger King is a lot of places I've been. Domino's and and then Starbucks obviously is a huge one. Even though there's not a Starbucks on Sicily, sometimes I just want a basic girl drink, and there's not a Starbucks.
Where's my cake pop? I want a cake pop.
I just want a little lemon loaf. But yeah, McDonald's. I think every country I've been to, I've eaten at a McDonald's. I'm pretty sure it's just safe. It's easy. They're usually by like airports or train stations, and so I'm like, I'm hungry. I need to eat now. But yeah, Subway. I remember seeing that and be like, this.
I know.
And KFC.
KFC is the one that always is weird to me because I'm like, I don't think it's that popular among fast food in the US. So it's kind of funny.
It used to be, not anymore. And there's a KFC here, and it's so annoying because they don't even have biscuits or mashed potatoes. I'm like, well, what's the point? I don't want KFC if I can't have a biscuit. It's upsetting to me.
Well, and then I feel bad because people who watch my channel are probably like, why is she always talking about Iceland? But they drink, I think, per capita the most Coca-Cola of any country.
Really?
So I have like pictures of Sean and I just like holding Coke, and I have a couple of Iceland vlogs on my channel and some Ireland vlogs, and it became a joke to like always get Coke now when we go to these other countries. I don't know, but like when we were in Iceland, I was like Coca-Cola and stuff, and because like you get it.
European sodas do not taste the same as in the States. Like, I've had Dr. Peppers in Europe, and they're terrible. They're just very flat. But Coke to me is amazing in Europe. But can we circle back though to the one time on Instagram when you said that you weren't as in love with the Cliffs of Moher as you should have been? I would like to address that.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
I love the Cliffs of Moher. When the pictures come back up on my phone, I'm like, she's so beautiful, so radiant. Just, what do you mean?
Okay. So this is not a good description. Okay. There are other places in Ireland that I feel like were just as beautiful, I guess is like the thing, right? Because there was this random stop that Sean and I made, and we just got out of the car and we're like, this is gorgeous. It was like cliffs, and there was flowers, wildflower, and like a fence, and there's like cows. I mean, there's cows at the Cliffs of Moher too, right? But like, I guess that's what I'm getting at is I was like, I get that the cliffs are huge and they're beautiful, but there was another part in Ireland where there was like an old castle that we're like, let's go check out this castle. And it was like $2 to get in because most of the castles that are more touristy cost a lot more. And this one was like really old, but it was right on a cliff. And I have this clip that looks fake, like where I'm recording from the view of like this castle of these cliffs, and there's a bird flying, and it's like far away at first, and then it like swoops by the camera, and it looks fake. It looks like I added a bird flying in. I don't know, and it's so beautiful, and I'm confused. Like, what the Cliffs of Moher are pretty, but like there's that one angle, you know, the one that like everybody takes the picture from. But then once you start walking, you're like, well, like I'm on them now, so I can't like see them, you know. But here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing. In Ireland, before I went, I was like, hey, if you guys have suggestions of like what I have to do in Ireland, because I like going to the not touristy things. Like I like exploring. And everyone's like, you have to go to Giant's Causeway. You have to go to Giant's Causeway. I went to Giant's Causeway, and you know what? Giant's Causeway is super overrated, and I'm going to show you why. All right?
Well, I didn't get up, because that's in Northern Ireland, right? I didn't
Yeah, we went to both.
Yeah. I wanted to go back, but now, you know, go ahead. Tell me it's overrated. Just kidding. But there's usually a few things where I'm like, I want to do this touristy thing, and then I want to go over here and wander, and then I usually find amazing little things like that. And I was in Europe at one time with my friend I went to college with, and she was like, how do you know about these things? And I'm like, I was on Pinterest, Lauren. I planned.
Pinterest. It's a curse. Like there's this, okay, by the way, when I was talking about it earlier, I went to Iceland in like the off season, so it's not as green. It looked really beautiful in person, but I know it's not as green. That's that mountain I was telling you about. That's I have a
off season. What time is that during the
so it's like mostly 2 seasons, right? Like winter, summer, basically. So I think on season starts in May. We went in April when it was still cold, and like the ice just started melting. And so this was all we had for directions to try to find this one waterfall that I saw on Pinterest. There's a post that just says Brewer Falls. That's it. We found it. Sean was so annoyed because he's like, we're never finding this waterfall. And I'm like, gosh darn, we're gonna. But look at this waterfall. It's like 2 different colors. Doesn't make any sense. Isn't that weird? It's so weird. And like,
here's so many things on Pinterest where I'm like, it's near such and such and such, and we're just like walking around.
Yes, but like
you usually find it.
That's the water is that dark stuff, and the bright stuff is this, like the same area. Isn't that weird?
Oh, it was like rock and.
But anyway, I'm going to show you why. So, Ireland is great. Ireland's a wonderful country. Giant's Causeway is like kind of. I feel like Ireland has a lot to offer. And it's weird to me that Giant's Causeway is the thing that people are like, go there, because I'm like, there were so many places I went that I thought were gorgeous that I've never heard of, that we just like stumbled upon. That's how it always goes, though, I feel like. But I'm going to show you you know what Giant's Causeway is, right? It's like those kind of hexagonal looking rocks. So the black sand beaches in Iceland, which are awesome. It's literally like, here's a picture of black sand, which is really cool. But look at this. It's just like at a beach in Iceland. And like, that's basically what Giant's Causeway is, these same like types of.
Yeah.
There's like this cave that we just walked into. Like, and I don't know. There's also a waterfall in another part of Iceland. Same kind of thing with those rocks. The same kind of, whoops, don't look down there. It's my name down there. But I probably showed it several times at this point. Whoops, it's fine. People know. But like, look at those rocks at this waterfall.
Yeah.
And like, so you're saying Giant's Causeway, which costs a lot to technically like to see it is free, but like parking or something like that, right? Where it's like,
of course. I hate that when it's like something outside, but they find a way. So like, I was going to go to Stonehenge, and then we figured how far outside of the city, outside of London it was. And like, I was like, I don't know. I'm good.
So here's a picture of that water. Look at those rocks.
I want to go now.
So cool.
Yeah, that does look like very similar. So I'd rather just go there. Although I also want to go to Scotland.
Yes, I do too. But I mean, Ireland is great. It's just like Giant's Causeway. I feel bad because I went to places for free that I just like walked around at the beach in Iceland, and then in Ireland it's like this whole thing. Like there's a whole like touristy videos playing and T-shirts you can buy, and I will say we went to Blarney Castle, and that is totally worth. I feel like
I didn't do that.
When we
Did
went,
you
they had those. You know, when you go out to amusement parks and they have like it's going to be another 45 minutes till you're on the ride. They had that for like kissing the Blarney Stone, except for nobody was there when we went, so we were just like walking right up to it. Basically, Blarney Castle was awesome. The grounds are amazing. Like you could spend a whole weekend because it's huge. There's all these gardens, and it is great. Blarney Castle was great. So many. I loved Kilkenny. I loved Killarney. All those places. Wicklow, great. The Powers Court Gardens and then the Powers Court Waterfall, amazing. But then, like, I guess Giant's Causeway was more toward the end of our trip, and I was like, I mean, most of what we've seen so far is way better.
I want to go back. My problem is I want to go back to places that I've been, and like either I just want to go back or I wasn't there long enough, and then I want to go to new places. And
another thing that makes us realize how short life is, because when you're like, if you decided that you would go to a state every year, it would still take 50 years of your life. Well, 49, because if you're already living in one. Doesn't that upset you?
I mean, luckily I've been to a lot of states, but I still have ones that I want to go to, and just not enough time. This is why I want to be immortal, but be able to take naps if we want to. Long naps. Hibernate. Like, I'm not feeling this decade. I'm going to sleep.
You're not feeling what?
But like, if I was immortal, I can be like, I'm not feeling this decade. I'm going to go to sleep and wake me up in 10 years.
Yeah, although eventually it would turn into every decade because you're like, oh, geez, people still suck. Okay, well, let me go back.
Again? Ugh, no.
Yeah. Things still haven't changed. All right, okay. And it'll be a perpetual cycle. But anyway, on that really happy note, it's a couple minutes shy of 2 hours. So
oh my gosh, it doesn't feel like that. There goes time.
Yeah, yes, I know. We're 2 hours older now. So we should probably call. It's late for you too. So thanks everybody who ends up watching this. Is there an emoji people should if they watched all the way till the end?
I don't know. Is there an emoji for Iceland, or maybe just an airplane, a travel?
Yes, there we go. And a clock, a clock, time, and then a skull for death, and then that'll be
so positive.
Booktube's wonderful. By the way, I hope we all don't die before our favorite books are released. So that'll be how we end it. Jessie May. I always feel the need to clarify. There's so many Jesses and Jessicas and stuff, but she's like, you always end videos like so funny. So like World Hoppers videos, I feel like I always find like the moment. The other day, a pre-recorded one, but like Alan just started like putting his face on his microphone. I'm like, okay, we should probably stop.
And
now. Yeah. So anyway, plane or a skull or a clock or all of the three, all of the above. It'll be really sad if nobody leaves those because that'll just mean people are like, they're not even talking about books anymore. They're just talking about like death.
These daggone dogs.
People will be like, I'm a cat person. Thank you. So anyway, you can leave a dog emoji too. But I hope everybody has a lovely rest of their day, and we'll see you guys later. I'll check out Jess's channel.
Bye.
Bye.